The Principal Advisory Group is a collection of 2 students from each grade who are elected through a pretty rigorous process. And throughout the year, you meet weekly with the principal, who bounces ideas off you, asks you questions about student life and how students are doing.
Meredith and the students from the Principal Advisory Team had a really strong voice in developing the current system that we're using. Those students and I met every Friday in the year leading up to implementation and through that first year of implementation. Proficiency-based learning and its rollout was the topic of conversation many of those times. And where they were super helpful was helping me understand how students would perceive certain things, and also how best to communicate to students.
So during my freshman year, Mr. McRaith, our principal, breached an idea to us about the transition to proficiency-based learning. And for a substantial amount of time, multiple months, we talked through the different aspects of the transition. So how many marking periods we were going to have, how many rubrics or LEs were going to be attached to classes, how the whole system basically was going to look, and how students would react to it. Because we brought the perspective of reality. We had had the A through F grading system for most of our education. So this transition was going to be a really big deal, and we wanted, as a group with the principal, to make sure that the transition wasn't going to be abrasive or harmful to students' educations, and hopefully in the long run be beneficial.
I think incorporating student voice has made us stronger along these lines for a couple of different reasons. One, they just have good ideas. They're just practical, good problem solvers. And then secondly, it increases the amount of ownership. Sometimes people say buy-in, but they really were owning it. So they became ambassadors.
Primarily, it showed to students who were really hesitant about this transition that their voices had been heard in the process. It was able to give the teachers a sense of confidence in that this process had been thought through by the students, because it's also for the teachers a really hesitant and scary thing to happen, because they've been teaching with the old system even longer than we've been learning.
They probably also are providing some level of reassurance to the community and parents as they sort of own this and say, hey, we're okay, we're learning, we feel like this is an improvement. And so I think their advocacy isn't just among their peers, it's also among the teachers and their parent community and the broader community. The students are also helpful in policing the system. They will come to me and say, hey, in this class, we only have one formative and then we had a summative. So they have really good ownership over that language and how it's meant to work. And so they end up really policing us and keeping us honest. Students on the Principal Advisory Team, or any students, they are invested because it does feel high stakes for them. It's their education and it's their transcript, and for a lot of these students that's really an important part of their life. And so they want to make sure that there is a plan and that it makes sense and that it's going to be in their best interest.
A lot of questions come up about college and how this is going to look for colleges, and is it going to disadvantage a student coming from a proficiency-based learning school? So you have to have answers as an educator. You have to have answers to all of those questions ready for your students, because believe it or not, we care a lot about what's happening, and we may not show it, but when we start to see changes affecting how our lives are playing out, that's when we really are going to stand up and say something. This change is worth it for so many reasons, and I believe this system actually does what most high schools say they do, in the way that it provides students an opportunity to make mistakes, but forces them to learn from those mistakes and forces them to grow, and provides a structure where they can seek help but also get help from their teachers, and just makes everything more cohesive.